Hey everyone, how you doing? TN Mortgage with John Coleman, and today we have a super special episode number 30.
Oh my God, Norm. Though, if I was honest with you, if I was only 30 years of age, I'd feel a lot better about myself. But still, in terms of 30 episodes, you bullied me into this, Norm. But here we are, and I have to say, I look forward to it now. So you have changed me.
Yeah, and hopefully a little bit for the better. And most importantly, we have an awesome group of people who listen and watch and subscribe and share and just trying to give great information and insight to people looking to buy homes and get a mortgage.
Well, that's what we're here for, Norm, and have a bit of fun along the way as well.
Yeah, that doesn't hurt. That doesn't hurt. Well, in episode number 30, we have something that's really good that a lot of people are searching for. A lot of people want information, and that is Ireland's first home scheme. So we're going to talk all about that today.
Excellent stuff. Yeah, no, I'm going to give a sort of a warts and all view of it from the good and the bad, and then whether I would use it myself. And there's a lot of good information, and it's something that there's a few nuances that people don't always pick up on that I think is very important. Would be very important to highlight as well.
Yeah. Yeah, like anything, this is great to have information, but by no means is this a complete guide, and they should contact you or another mortgage professional to look into their personal situation. But
Absolutely,
yeah,
and it doesn't have to be me. By the way, there are other very good brokers out there as well.
it doesn't hurt to give you a call. It doesn't hurt. You do a good job. But so if it's okay with you, John, I have about 8 questions here. We could do these rapid fire, and you could just give us your
Perfect.
notes and feedback.
Yeah, perfect.
All right. So we'll start with the easy one, the very basics. What is the first home scheme?
Okay, well, let me kind of backtrack a little bit in terms of when it came out. It's out about 2 years at this point, and it was one of the government's efforts to help people who basically, because the banks are limited with central bank rules as to the amount of money they will lend, a lot of people were unable to get the mortgage they needed to buy a home. So basically, this was a government scheme added to help people make up the difference between what the bank will lend them and the actual cost of the property. Okay, so that's where it came from. Um, where does it actually? It's for new properties only,
Mhm.
except if the house you're currently living in is being sold. So 99 times out of 100 is going to be just for a new property. And then it's based on an equity share. Okay. So the government can take anywhere between 0 and 30% of the actual cost of the property. If you happen to be using 20 the help to buy scheme, and we'll touch on that a little bit more later, the maximum you can get from the government for the scheme is basically 20% equity share. Now, basically, it comes in many different ways. It basically will come, um, it's location based. So
Mhm.
depending on where the property you're looking to buy is, there's a ceiling on the price that you can use. So in Dublin, it's the maximum price for a house is 475,000. For some reason, I still haven't got a proper answer. For an apartment, if it's new, it's 500,000.
Okay.
But in the main, is 475 is your upper limit. Outside of Dublin, it can go as far as 425, 350. So you really need to look at where you're looking to buy, and then just basically you'll see the limit as to the cost price, because a lot of say new properties in Dublin might cost 500,000, but they wouldn't qualify because 475, as things stand, is the maximum price.
Okay. Got it. So it gets a little bit complex. There's a couple moving parts people need to understand.
Oh, absolutely. If I was to give a quick summary of those moving parts, is one, it only makes up the difference. So if the bank will lend you the money, you won't be using the first home scheme. Two, it's for new properties only, subject to except for that one exception. And three, then there's a ceiling of a price with for Dublin 475. but for other areas it can be go down to 425, 375. So you basically just wherever you're looking to buy, you would just check out what the ceiling of the price is, and that's where you'd stand accordingly, you know.
Great. Great. All right. And now the next question is a big one. How to apply for the first home scheme? Where do people go?
Well, it's actually quite simple. Well, it is and it isn't. The first thing you need to do is basically have an approval from the bank. So if you're talking to me, we would get you an approval with the bank, and then you would approach, just go directly to the first home scheme. It's quite quick actually, and they will confirm how much they'd be prepared to give you. It's not a qualifying thing. Once you've been approved by the bank, they will give you the money. They will approve you for the extra, and it's just a document that the bank would then need when you're actually coming to find a house. The one caveat again is that the banks who work with this scheme are obliged to give you the maximum that you qualify for. Okay, so you can't say, well, I'll only take 300 from the bank and I'll take the rest of the first home scheme. Where if the bank were actually happy to lend you 350, you're obliged to take the full 350.
Got it. Interesting. And so you covered this a
Yeah.
little bit, but the next one is how does first home scheme work? How does the first home scheme work? And you covered that pretty well, but if there's any other notes or things you think.
Yeah, and I'm going to go when I'm talking about how the first home scheme works. I'm going to hit people with what I would consider the one area it may even be a question you have for later, is a lot of people want to use the first home scheme in conjunction with the help to buy scheme. Okay. And this is where there is a really, really important nuance, and that people don't always take into account, because they kind of go, well, I'll get my 30,000 in theory from the help to buy and I'll use the first home scheme. But with the help to buy scheme, you need to be borrowing 70% of the cost price
Okay.
to actually qualify to use it. So hypothetically, right, I'll just give you an example where people will sometimes not get this. So say the price of the property they're looking to buy is the maximum 475. Okay. And they want to use the first home scheme and the help to buy scheme. But say the banks would only lend them 300,000. Then they can't use both, because at 475, 332 is the magic figure.
Okay.
Okay. That's 70% of the 475. That would allow you use the help to buy. Now, in that instance, you can still purchase the home by taking more of the first home scheme. Okay. You can use up to 30% of the first home scheme in that instance. You just are foregoing the help to buy scheme, you know.
Okay.
And in terms of how it works, this is the important piece. It basically, you only, and people always ask this and probably doesn't get as much attention as it should. Well, how do you pay it back, right? It's not free money. It's not like the help to buy is just a refund of your tax contributions. This is another party taking a 30% stake in your new home, basically, right? You'll only start paying it back after 5 years. It's at a lower rate than the interest rates that are out there, and you can overpay and buy it back pretty quickly. But if, for example, you're buying a house today, that's just for the sake of making this maths easy, for 400,000, okay? And in 5 years' time, the value of your house is 440. Well, you now owe 30% or 20%, depending on what you took, of the 440, not of the actual. So the government are having an equity share in your property. So if the value of that's going up, obviously what you owe goes up accordingly as well.
Yeah, a lot of people don't know that. I think that's great information. And then how people can actually find first home scheme houses or properties when they're out looking?
It's difficult, but like the first question you see, if you're coming across a new development, you just have to ask the agent, do they qualify for the first home scheme? The biggest clue is going to be in the price. Okay, if the price is over 475,000, it won't qualify for it unless it's an apartment. Okay, so that's the first clue. So if the price is priced at 475, it's a very strong indicator that it qualifies for it. But The quickest and easiest way is that if you're looking at a development, just ask the agent, do these houses qualify for the first home scheme?
Okay, great. And how long does it take for the first home scheme approval?
Currently, 2 to 3 days. It's very quick as things stands now. That's at this moment of time. Obviously, you never know where that might be in the future. But right now, that doesn't take much time because there's no. It's not assessed on any income. It's not assessed on any bank. It's not assessed how long you've been in the country. If you're buying a new property, you qualify as long as you the bank aren't lending you more than would it's like it's only to make up the shortfall from. So if the bank are lending you too much, you don't qualify for. So it is a very, very quick process.
Oh, well, that's good because you don't hear much about quick and easy processes with anything in mortgage in Ireland. Huh?
No, you really don't. In fairness, it is very quick, and it's not a case of you won't. No one has ever said to me, "Oh, they said no."
Yeah,
It doesn't happen.
wonderful. And you definitely covered this a little bit, but see if you have any more notes. How does the first home scheme differ from the Help to Buy scheme? And if you
But
did cover this, you know.
no, I think it's worthy of a repeating this, so there's no harm. The first home scheme is it's an equity share. Okay, you have to pay the money back, which starts after 5 years, and it only makes up the difference between what the bank will lend you and the actual cost price. Okay, it can be anywhere between 20% of the cost price and 30% of the cost price. It can be 30% if you're not using the Help to Buy scheme, 20% if you are. Okay, the Help to Buy scheme is a non-refundable refund of the tax that you paid in the last 5 years.
Hmm,
Okay. So up to a maximum of 30,000 or 10% of the cost price. Now, in most cases, the house new prices are over 300, but if it was outside of Dublin and happened to be 250, you'd only get 10%.
mhm.
Okay. Um, it is non-refundable. It's only on new properties. There's a slight difference in terms of the value, and I don't know what their thinking was here. 500,000 is the maximum price on new properties, whether it be in the house or an apartment. It makes no difference. You'll still get up to 30,000.
Okay.
Um, but one thing I would say with Help to Buy, and maybe we'll have a separate conversation on this one, is that people always think, oh yeah, I paid lots of tax, I'll get the full 30,000. Check with revenue. Don't be making any false assumptions on that.
Yeah. All right, John, and awesome information you're giving about the first home scheme here. One
But,
more
but
question.
yeah, there probably is one more question about which banks. I'm sure you're going to ask me about which banks because not all the banks do this.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, well, let me talk you through that. And this is really, really important as well, right? Some banks who might lend you 30, 40, 50,000 more to get you over that 330 do not, as things stand, work with the first home scheme. So at the moment, it's really the main banks that work with. What I mean by the main banks, you're looking at Bank of Ireland, Permanent TSB, AIB. They're the three main banks that actually work with the first home scheme.
Okay.
Okay, so you're at the mercy of those banks in relate if you want to use this scheme. So that's a really, really important piece because on one hand, I could be telling you the bank will lend you 350,000, right? But there might be a bank that might lend you, but that might work with the first home scheme, and the bank that who do work might only lend you 320. So again, these are the little nuances that you need to be. Like, it's so easy to make false assumptions around what you can do if you're not getting good advice here because you could be told you qualify for X and then you want to use the first home scheme and then suddenly you're disappointed.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So even more important, why they should talk to you or a great professional mortgage person before doing anything, before making any big moves, huh?
Goes back to what I always talk about, the roadmap, knowing
Yeah.
where you stand and very educate yourself with good information before you set off on the journey of trying to find a home for yourselves.
Well, wonderful. Yeah. And any other experiences or stories or case studies, any clients you remember with the first home scheme along the way?
Initially, some of the banks were having difficulties understanding it, if that makes any sense. That sounds crazy. They didn't really understand the rules. They were kind of going, oh, well, we can only lend them X because of this. And they were always wrong, right? But it did cause some stressful moments for people when the banks were sort of challenging what they could do. And they didn't understand the rules themselves, basically. Now, thankfully, that has gone away, and there's a much clearer understanding from everyone as to the process, because the banks do factor in. So, say in theory, the bank will lend you 330,000 hypothetically, right? But that's just on a normal buying a house. The bank do have to take some cognizance of the fact that in 5 years' time, you're going to have a commitment to start paying back the first home scheme.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So that can actually reduce the amount of money that they will lend to you. Okay. So again, remember and keeping in mind that to use both the first home scheme and the help to buy, you need to be borrowing 70%. So these are little things that you just need to make sure don't catch you up at the point when you're looking for a home, you know.
Wonderful. Yeah, I think this is really helpful for people to get the basics, and then also what's behind the curtain a little bit when it comes to the subtleties or the nuances of these schemes. So great information, John. And hey, let's go celebrate now. Tea and Mortgage episode number 30.
Whoa! Thank you for pushing me through this, because it's funny. And on a sooner, like, I have obviously one of my colleagues who would have had the same stage fright as me, and she helped Soya, who looks after um, all the Brazilians, and I pushed her to do things that were outside her comfort zone. And now she's doing a webinar once a month with all the Brazilian community here in Ireland.
And she loves it.
If you hadn't pushed me and I hadn't kind of begrudgingly done this, I wouldn't have been able to sort of say to her, you should be doing this, because you have to practice what you preach, And she's, oh, John, I don't want to do it. I don't like it. And I kind of go, I didn't like it either, but it does become easier, So,
and when you
thank you for being that. I'm trying to find the nice word to describe you here. But,
the electric cattle prod.
We'll go with that. Okay.
But it's nice. I was just going to say, it's when you see that it's not about you, but it's about the community and about people really have questions and they need good advice without, just sales, without fluff, without an agenda. And you see that's well responded to, then it gets easier, right?
Yeah. And well, I think you deserve a bit of credit here, my friend. You've always made this feel like it's ever since we first have started collaborating, got over 5 years ago now. You've always made me feel as if you and I are just having a conversation between two guys sitting in a bar, just having a normal chit chat. So I kind of tend to forget that this is for a larger audience, even though I know that the concept of this is all about educating other people and bringing good information to people. It still feels like just you and I having a chat that there might be people listening in on, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's the best way to do it. And we definitely keep in mind all of the people who are listening and supporting and subscribing. And thank you all so much. And you could all contact John. We'll have apply links or contact links. And if you want your personalized roadmap, John's the man to reach out to.
Great. Well, thanks, Norm. And looking forward to episode number 31.
31 next month. All right. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.